I know you've been out there fighting for many, many months, and and the past couple of weeks have been really tough. And I got to say, I appreciate you reaching out. You guys always reach out to me and say, hey, let's chat about what's going on. There's a lot of people that don't do that. So, in spite of kind of the heat being turned up a little bit, you're still out there, talking to constituents. I think that's good.
You bet. I mean, it's important. I'm a big believer that even when they're lying about you, if they're coming after you, then you are making a difference. And we want to make a difference. You guys, your listeners, make a difference. And we're facing a momentous time. Mm-hmm. And this is a real crossroads for our country and, quite frankly, for the history of the world. And so we all have to, buckle up and keep going.
So I was talking with someone from D.C. yesterday on the vaccine issue. So they were actually based in D.C. And my question to them, besides all the COVID stuff, was, what's it like in D.C. right now? And I mean, we see the reports of 25,000 troops, National Guard, et cetera, being stationed there for the inauguration tomorrow. I know you left D.C., but what was the feel before you got out of there, or what are you seeing?
It's very tense right now in D.C. for a lot of reasons. This isn't, you're not seeing a lot of optimism and hope with this transition to the Biden administration. What you're seeing is a lot of concern, a lot of tension. And that's kind of a dark atmosphere, kind of a, not a very happy, sunny type of feeling as I left DC last week.
Yeah. And I look at it and I say, okay, they're taking the precautions so there's nothing happens. But then I look at it and say, wow, they need this much force to do this transition and to do security. You can't go there and really, you can't get in, from what I'm hearing. No matter how you try to look at it, what angle, in my opinion, it's not good for our country.
No, I agree with that. I mean, they've asked us to keep our staff away. They've asked us, they've kind of discouraged people from going, which I'm honoring that discouragement and not going to be attending tomorrow. I'll view remotely, if I can put it that way. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, it's a peaceful transition, but I don't know why the show of force has got to be so great. I mean, I understand what happened a couple of weeks ago, and that was a shame and a tragedy, and outrageous. But where we sit today, we have to make that transition, and we have to take them on and get ready to take this thing back from everything from the state level, state legislatures on elections integrity, right on up to staring face to face with another $2 trillion package and open borders and killing the Keystone Pipeline, all the things that the incoming administration says they're going to do. We have got to be there. And we also have to win the hearts and minds of America's people and remind them of pre-COVID what the benefits were to have a president kind of like we had with Donald Trump. Yeah.
I wonder, though, let's talk about Biden's agenda. I've been talking about it a lot. And folks, tomorrow we'll do open lines for you. And we can, console each other. We can talk about what's to come. But just the stimulus alone, they're looking at 1.9, let's call it $2 trillion. Once again, $1,400 check, so it can look like people are getting $2,000 in total here over the past few weeks. But let me get your opinion. They're not going to be able to stop at this one stimulus package at $2 trillion because, in my opinion, they're using this to buy votes. So as you get closer to the midterms coming up, which is here just around the corner, they're going to have to do a series of these to buy those votes. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm actually hearing that $2 trillion is kind of the starting point, and that it could work its way up to north of $3 trillion by the time they finish negotiating on that. And if you were to take out the COVID relief packages that President Trump did, he would have spent something like he would increase the deficit only like 60% of what the previous administration did in its first 4 years. And so the COVID relief stuff really hurt his record, the President Trump's record on deficit control. But what they're talking about here is disregard that altogether. And I didn't vote for those for the simple reason that if you really want to help people get going, you open up the economy. That's what you do, and you let people make rational choices on their own, assess the risk and a reward, and go forward, just like we do on 100 things each person does every day. Mm-hmm. And so we're in potential trouble on that, Jeff. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, Congressman Biggs, what about the moral hazard here? Let's talk about you got this massive recall going on in California for a what's becoming more and more of a failed state with Governor Newsom, and they stayed shut. So you've got some of these states that have multi-billion-dollar shortfalls, right, because of everything that's happened. You look at Arizona, we're doing pretty good. I was surprised to see in the budget that there may be a surplus again, but I haven't honestly dove into it enough to make sure all the numbers are right in my limited capacity. But aren't the states now just going to be given a pass on we can close, we can fail, and the feds are going to bail us out?
Yeah, that's right. There is a moral hazard there, and it's basically it's going to bite twice, because what you're going to do is you provide a disincentive to be responsible of any kind of responsible governance. And I'll applaud Governor Ducey and the legislature, because they actually did a pretty good job of managing their budget through a very extremely tight time. Now, I think we could have had a much more robust economy in the state, but we can leave that aside for now, mm-hmm. and just talk about the second bite of that moral hazard that comes. And so you make a disincentive for bad governance, but then the second moral hazard is you actually legitimize the wealth transfer from a future generation to this generation, and that really needs to be made very, very clear, because my generation probably is not going to get saddled with this at all, but it is the younger generation, kids in elementary school, the kids in college, and young adults. They're the ones that are going to be stuck facing this rather immoral, untenable, and quite frankly unconscionable debt load.
Yeah, I don't see a conceivable way to pay it off, honestly. I mean, if you just do the math on it, you and I have spent a lot of time talking about this, and you got Janet Yellen coming in, and now you have this kind of circle of life between the Federal Reserve and the Treasury. So it's just like all the lines have been blurred, I guess, and I don't see that changing. So how else do you pay off all this stuff rather than inflate it out, devalue the currency, or you default on it? There's really I don't think you could work your way out of this, is what I guess I'm saying.
Well, right. I mean, it would take a slashing of spending and everything from, just all across the board, mm-hmm. which would put the country in a real jeopardy there. But I think that the way that they will do it, and it's not a very elegant way, but it is simpler to do it, and that's just let the currency be devalued. Yeah. Now, what Jeff, think about this. I've heard that there is really some kind of really moderate inflationary pressure. There's been reports that we're under some inflationary pressure. If you were to raise and go by, say, your prime goes from where it is now, which is practically 0, to 1 to 1.5, maybe even as high as 2%. Can you imagine the debt servicing cost that would inure to the federal government at that point, and how would they deal with that?
No, yeah, just those little increases exactly have huge impacts. Actually, there's a couple listeners right now that will be yelling at me soon, because they don't even talk about the debt, don't even talk about all these issues, because nobody cares anymore. And I feel obligated to talk about it because I still care, and I think there's still, even though we may be in the minority, it's still worth talking about. But look, we'll move on. We'll go ahead.
About 30 members of Congress actually really willing to do something about it, and quite frankly, your 4 Republican Arizona congressmen and women. We talk about this. Yeah. We talk about this when we see each other. We talk about what are we going to do? How do we get our colleagues to do something, and because we do care, and I think that's important to know that there are some of us who really care and are trying to come up with a solution. Yeah. We just can't get buy-in from the majority.
35 out of 435. That's not bad. Right?
Hey,
almost 10%.
Any glimpse of hope, right?
Yeah, right. No, we'll take it. No, we'll keep talking about it. Okay, let's move on, though. The other issue that I see, and I just pulled up Fox News here. I was looking at Newsmax earlier, too. First order of business. Biden to unveil immigration overhaul to give amnesty to millions as migrant caravan raises new challenge. And I think about all the problems we're dealing with, like we just talked about. And this is the first order of business?
Yeah, I mean, I want you to think about what that does. It puts pressure on low-skilled, low-wage labor. And the way to think about that is when President Trump, before we encountered the COVID lockdowns that the states and cities put on all over the place, you had more people working in the workforce than ever. And that meant that there was pressure on wages to increase. So people who were low skilled, low wage, they were making more money. When you bring in millions of people who are low skilled, low wage, they compete with citizens who rightfully are here, and they're going to do an amnesty program within 8 years. And by the way, you should read what some of the folks in Congress are saying about what their intention is, and Biden seems to be all over that. But they're going to basically provide a path to citizenship for upwards of 30 million people. They don't know what the numbers. They've been using the 11 million number for 12 years. The number is really probably north of 25 million.
Are these the Dreamers? Is that those group of folks as well, or is this
no?
So this is in addition.
This is the Dreamers, which is somewhere probably a couple million. Mm-hmm. But this is we're talking to people who are illegally in the country. I mean, just flat out illegally in the country. We're not talking about people who were brought here against when they're little bitty kids or whatnot. We're talking about people who are illegally in the country.
All right, folks, and we're talking with Congressman Andy Biggs. Congressman, looking at more here at Joe Biden's agenda, which getting sworn in here real soon, is the first executive order. This is why we shouldn't do executive orders, because they're just undone by the next person. The Paris Climate Accord. Trump had us out of that, right? Tell us real quick what the problem with the Paris Climate Accord is, and what we may have to deal with going forward as Biden re-signs this, reorders this, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, so this is, and many you may get into more. We may get into more, but the Paris Climate Accord is the foundational, is the foundation for the Green New Deal that the Democrats want. What it does is it puts the U.S. at an extremely competitive disadvantage with all of our economic competitors around the world, and tightens the screws on the U.S. and actually imposes sanctions on the U.S. So we're basically volunteering to go in and do sanctions, even though our record is better than any other nation in the last 20 years in reducing carbon emissions, et cetera. We've done better than any other nation. And so this is going to have a devastating impact on our economy. By signing this, the problem is this is supposed to be a treaty, and it can't get ratified in the Senate. But what Biden's going to do, he's going to get us into it and then impose that on all our agencies to enforce the Paris Climate Accords without going through the constitutional process of a treaty arrangement. So it's again another at least a double bite.
And then it'll get shadowed on and echoed down to the state governments, the county governments, the city governments.
Right.
I think there's a lot of city governments that signed resolutions adopting it or supporting it anyway, even when Trump took us out, because it was Obama who signed us into it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. So, and then a double whammy here. We've enjoyed, what are you paying in Phoenix for a gallon of gas now? It's always cheaper than up here. $2?
Okay. No, a little more than that. I want to say, I think I did $2.29 the other day. I think it's $2.29. Pretty
good. I mean, it's been really dang low for a long time, but so now you've got the Paris Accords, you got all this climate stuff. Then you have the Keystone pipeline from Alberta to Nebraska, bringing in, I guess, the shale oil and all this stuff we've done with fracking and shale oil, et cetera, et cetera. and United States has done a tremendous job. But a lot of these places have gone out of business because the oil prices went way down. So we're looking at capacity issues probably, and eventually when production, when people start manufacturing and driving more, we could be looking at some real expensive gas coming up, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, you're exactly right. Here's the way to think of it, Jeff. Here's the way I think of it anyways, is he's going to make us no longer energy independent. We're going to be energy dependent again, the way we were under everybody else this century until you get to Donald Trump. And that means that we're not going to be able to export as much natural gas as we did, which means that sector of the economy is going to hurt a little bit more. It means that we're going to pay more for our gas. It means you're going to pay more for your heating oil. It means you're going to pay more for your electricity in the summer to cool. All of this is going to put pressure on inflation, which gets to back to our deal of, do they devalue the currency to create false inflation to eliminate debt? And maybe yes and no, but all of this will have a tremendous a slowdown effect on our economy, which means that people are not going to be able to get the jobs they want. They're not going to be able to consume what they want. They're not going to be able to have the economic freedom that they enjoyed under Trump. And then you add that to the immigration policy of Joe Biden, and you can see we're going to be under economic